All right, guys, we are in chapter 7. We are moving to the Americas, some of the native populations that were there. So, peoples of the civilizations of the Americas, 1200 BCE to 1400 CE. All right, so you start here with the Olmec and the Chauvin. The Olmec, the Mesoamerican Olmec, were some of the most significant pre-classic society. They developed a kingship. They've had amazing architecture. I suggest looking at some of those things. You had early South American civilization as the Chauvin, which went from 900 to 200 BC. They were defined by their military strength and labor organization, which made them a well-oiled machine, both militarily as well as economically. So these are the two areas that we're looking at right here. So major Olmec sites, kind of the Mesoamerican area, and then the Chauvin cultural zone, which is in the south. This is an Olmec head, still around today. So let's look at Teotihuacan, which I probably mispronounced that, but we're going to look at that area first. The Teotihuacan was a large Mesoamerican city at the height of its power in 450 to 600 CE. The city had a population of about 125 to 150,000 inhabitants and was dominated by religious structures, including pyramids and temples, where human sacrifice was carried out. The growth of Teotihuacan was made possible by forced relocation of farm families to the city and by agriculture innovations, including irrigation works and chinampas, which are floating gardens. I suggest looking those up. They are very interesting. That increased the production and thus supported a larger population. Apartment-like stone buildings housed commoners, including the artisans who made pottery and obsidian tools and weapons for export. The elite lived in separate residential compounds and controlled the state bureaucracy, tax collection, and commerce. Teotihuacan appears to have been ruled by alliances of wealthy families rather than by kings. The military was used primarily to protect and expand long-distance trade and to ensure that farmers paid taxes or tribute to the elite. Teotihuacan collapsed around 650 CE. The collapse may have been caused by mismanagement of resources and conflict within the elite as a result of an invasion. Then we move to the Maya. The Maya were a single culture living in modern Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, and southern Mexico, but they never formed a politically unified state. Various Maya kingdoms fought each other for regional dominance. The Maya increased their agricultural productivity by draining swamps, building elevated fields and terraced fields, and by constructing irrigation systems. The Maya also managed forest resources to increase the production of desired products. The largest Mayan city-states dominated neighboring city-states and agricultural areas. Large city-states constructed impressive and beautifully decorated buildings and monuments by the means of very simple technology, using levers and tools. The Maya believed that the cosmos consisted of three layers: the heavens, the human world, and the underworld. Temple architecture reflected this cosmology, and the rulers and the elites served as priests to communicate with the residents of the two supernatural worlds. Maya military forces fought for captives, not for territory. Elite captives were sacrificed. Commoners were enslaved. Maya elite women participated in bloodletting rituals and other ceremonies, but they rarely held political power. Non-elite women probably played an essential role in agriculture and textile production. The most notable Maya technological developments are the Maya calendar, mathematics, and the Maya writing system. Most Maya city-states were abandoned or destroyed between 800 and 900 CE. Possible reasons for the decline in Maya culture included the disruption of Mesoamerican trade resulting from the fall of Teotihuacan, environmental pressure caused by overpopulation, and increased warfare. This is the area of the Maya civilization that we are talking about right here. I've actually visited the Mayan pyramids at Chichen Itza. Very interesting area. Get a chance to go to Cancun. It's one of the things I definitely suggest you go see because they are still around and it is amazing to still watch or still visit and see. So let's get the Toltecs. The Toltecs arrived in central Mexico in the 10th century and built a civilization based on the legacy of Teotihuacan. The Toltecs contributed innovations in the areas of politics and war. Toltec's capital of Tula was the center of the first conquest state in the Americas. Dual kings ruled the state, an arrangement that probably caused the internal struggle that undermined the Toltec state around 1000 CE. The Toltecs were destroyed by invaders around 1156 CE. This is the post-classic Mesoamerican area, so you see the spread of Toltec influence. You see the Mayan culture in the Toltec area as well. This is in Tula. One more group of people that we need to make sure we discuss that is not on here is the Aztecs, so I'd write Aztecs down. The Aztecs were originally a northern people with a clan-based social organization. They migrated to the Lake Texcoco, which is Texcoco area. They established the cities of Tenochtitlan and Tlatelolco, which is Tlateelolco, around 1325. And then developed a monarchical system of government. Gender division and labor was a distinct yet complementary. Though warfare increased male power, females maintained control over household and market. Remember, we are in the Aztecs here. The kings increased their wealth and power by means of territorial conquest. As the Aztec Empire increased in size, the commoners lost the ability to influence political decisions, and inequalities in the wealth grew more severe. The Aztecs increased agricultural production in the capital by undertaking land reclamation projects and constructing irrigated fields and chinapas. Nonetheless, grain and other food tribute met nearly 1/4 of the capital's food requirements. Merchants, who were distinct from and subordinate to the political elite, controlled the long-distance trade. The technology of trade was simple. No wheeled vehicles, draft animals, or money was used. Goods were carried by human porters and exchanged through barter. The Aztecs worshipped a large number of gods, the most important of whom was, who I'm going to just spell it for you guys, Huitzilopocchtli, which is known as the sun god. Sun god required a diet of human hearts, which were supplied by human sacrifice that increased through time. So that was the Aztecs. Now we're going to move down to the northern peoples. So we're going to look at southwestern desert cultures, mound builders, things like that. The irrigation, so we're going to look at the southwestern desert cultures first. Irrigation-based agriculture was introduced to Arizona from Mexico around 300 BCE. The most notable Mexican-influenced civilization of the area was the Hohokam, which is Hohokam, who constructed extensive irrigation works in the Salt and Gila valleys around 1000 CE. The more influential Anasazi, which I'm sure I mispronounced, developed maize, rice, and bean economy and constructed underground buildings known as kivas in the Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah region around 450 to 750 CE. You can still visit many of those cities, those towns today. The largest Anasazi community at the Chaco Canyon had a population of about 15,000 people. They engaged in hunting, trade, and irrigated agriculture. Chaco Canyon people believed to have exerted some sort of political or religious dominance over the large region. The Anasazi civilization declined in the 12th and 13th centuries as a result of drought, overpopulation, and warfare. Now we're going to move to the mound builders. The Hopewell culture developed out of the earlier Adena culture around 100 CE. It was based in the Ohio Valley, but its trade and influence extended as far as Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, New York, Ontario, and south to Florida. Like the Adena, the Hopewell economy was based on hunting and gathering and was supplemented by agriculture. The major Hopewell centers were ruled by hereditary chiefs. Chiefs served as priests and managed secular affairs such as long-distance trade. The Hopewell people built large mounds both as burial sites and as platforms upon which temples and residences of the chiefs were constructed. Hopewell sites were abandoned around 400 CE, but the Hopewell technology and mound building are linked to the development of the Mississippian culture as well, which happened from 700 to 1500 CE. Urbanized Mississippian chiefdoms were made possible by the increased agricultural productivity, the bow and arrow, and expanded trade networks. The largest Mississippian center was Cahokia, with a population of 30,000 around 1200 CE. Cahokia was abandoned around 1250, perhaps because of climate changes and pressures. The Cahokia Mounds are just east of St. Louis. You can still visit those today. It is a National Historical Site. And this is the areas that we're talking about in North America. The Mesa Verde Cliff Dwelling, I've actually been there. It's a fascinating place if you ever get a chance to go. So let's look at the Andean civilizations. The harsh environment, the high altitude Andes, the dry coastal plain, and the tropical headwaters of the Amazon forced the human inhabitants of these areas to organize labor efficiently and thus produce enough food to survive or to live. The basic unit of Andean labor organization was the clan. Clans held land collectively. The clan members were obligated to assist each other in the production and supply of goods and labor to the clan chief. Territorial states organized after 1000 CE introduced the institution of the mita, which required each clan to provide a set number of workers each year to provide labor for religious establishments, the royal court, or the aristocracy. Work was divided along gender lines. Men were responsible for hunting, war, and government. Women wove and cared for crops and the home. The Andean region is divided into 4 major ecological zones: the coast, mountain valleys, higher elevations, and the Amazonian region. Each region produced different goods, and these goods were exchanged among various regions through a network of trade routes. Now we have to move to the Moke. Moke culture emerged in the north coastal region in Peru in about 200 CE. The Moke used the Mita labor system to construct an extensive irrigated agriculture that produced maize, quinoa, beans, and manioc. Moke society was stratified and theocratic. Wealth and power were concentrated in the hands of the elite of priests and military leaders who lived atop large platforms and decorated themselves in magnificent clothing, jewelry, and tall headdresses. Commoners cultivated their fields and supplied Mita labor to the elite. Moke artisans were skilled in the production of textiles, portrait vases, and metallurgy. Gold and silver were used for decorative purposes. Copper and copper alloy were used to form farm tools and weapons. The decline and fall of the Moke civilization may be attributed to a series of natural disasters in the 6th century and to pressure of warlike Warai people in the 8th century, which brings us to the Teotihuacan, I'm going to just say that, and Wari. The civilization of Teotihuacan in Bolivia experienced increased agricultural productivity and urbanization. In the years 200 CE, Teotihuacan cultivated potatoes and grains on raised fields reclaimed from marshland. Teotihuacan's urban center included a large terraced pyramid, walled enclosures, and a reservoir. Construction was done with large stones quarried, moved, and laid by thousands of laborers working with simple technology and copper alloy tools. Teotihuacan society was highly stratified, ruled by hereditary elite. Some scholars believe that Teotihuacan was the capital of a vast empire, but archaeological evidence suggests that it was only a ceremonial and political center for a large regional population. The Wari culture was located near the city of Ayacucho, which is Ayucucho in Peru. Wari had contact with Teotihuacan, but was a separate culture. The city was built without central planning, with difficult techniques, and on a much smaller scale than Teotihuacan. Both Teotihuacan and Wari declined to to insignificance around 1000 CE. So let's now move. This is the Andean cultures. So last group we need to talk about is actually the Incas. So we're going to talk about them and then we will be done. So make sure you have Incans down. The Incan were a small chiefdom in Cusco until their leaders consolidated political authority and began a program of military expansion in the 1430s. By 1525, the Incan had constructed a huge empire. The key to Incan wealth was their ability to develop a strong military and to use it to broaden and expand the traditional exchange system that had linked the various ecological zones of the Andes region together. The Inca used the Mita labor system to form their armies, build their capital city, maintain the religious institutions, and provide for the old, the weak, and the ill. The Incan generally left local rulers in place, controlling them by means of military garrisons and by their heirs to Cusco as hostages. At the central level, the Incan created an imperial bureaucracy led by the king. Each king was required to prove himself by conquering new territory. The capital city of Cusco was laid out in the shape of a puma, and its buildings were constructed of stone laid together without mortar. Cusco's palaces were richly decorated temples, and were the scene of rituals, feasts, and sacrifices of textiles, animals, and other tribute goods, and occasional human. Cultural attainments of the Incan Empire include astronomical observation, weaving, copper and bronze metallurgy, and gold and silver working. The Incan did not produce new technologies, but made more efficient use of existing technology to create profits gained by the trade among the ecological zones of the Andean region. Incan domination resulted in increased wealth, but also in reduced levels of local autonomy. When the elite fell into civil war in 1525, Incan control over its vast territories was weakened. All right, guys, that is chapter 7.